Hello, it's Salimik. In today's video, I will show you how to change 3 most important oils on your Toyota Camry: flushing brake fluid, changing engine oil and the filter, and changing transmission fluid. We're gonna do all these in one video. So we're gonna start with brake fluid. So for 2019 Toyota Camry, I will be using Pristone synthetic .4 brake fluid. You can use .3 and .4, but I will be using .4. We're gonna need 2 bottles like this, each one 12 ounces, 350 milliliter, and it will last 50,000 miles. Before changing brake fluid, I will be using brake fluid tester. It will measure moisture percentage in the brake fluid. Because brake fluid hygroscopic, it likes to absorb water. So higher moisture content means we have to flush the brake fluid. Speaking of flushing, I will be using this brake fluid pump for flushing each wheel without needing anyone to press the brake pedal. And the assembly is very easy. Short hose first and then the container. Long hose and then the valve that matches your car's bleeding valve. And you have many valve sizes to choose from. I chose the smallest one. It also comes with extra hoses and Y connectors if your car has dual brake piston and 2 bleeding valves. This kit for the price has a decent suction, and we will see how long it will take to bleed one brake caliper. We also gonna need a spray bottle like this in case of spilling any brake fluid. And the last thing, one 8mm wrench for opening brake valves for bleeding. Alright, here is the brake reservoir. This strut brace in our way, so I'm gonna have to remove this bolt and loosen the other one so I can lift it and work on that reservoir easily. Alright, before opening the reservoir cap, I recommend you to put few sharp towels around the reservoir in case of spilling any brake fluid. Because brake fluid corrosive, if it's touched the paint, it will damage it if you don't wash it right away. So it's better to put few towels around it in case of spilling any drop. Alright, now we know what we need. Let's take the brake fluid cap and test the fluid. And I like to take the filter strainer out. It's easier for suctioning old fluid and adding new fluid later. Alright, let's turn the tester on and put it in the fluid. Let's see how much moisture we got. According to the tester, we have humidity more than 4%. If we leave it like this, it will damage all the seals in the brake components. Okay, first thing we need to do, suction the old fluid from the reservoir. So for that, I will change the head from this to needle valve shape. So the first thing we need to do before flushing, suction the old fluid from the reservoir so we can fill it with new one. I'm using the same kit. In this case, no need to use turkey baster or anything else. Because of the size of the bleeding container, I had to drain the container and continue suctioning all the fluid from the reservoir. So in this case, take your time and make sure the reservoir is completely empty. It took me 2 times to drain the container and empty the whole reservoir. So as I emptied the reservoir, I saw these small plastic pieces in the reservoir, even though there was a filter on it. So I'm not quite sure how it got in the reservoir. Hope it's not being suctioned in the system. So I took my time and took each one out with a small screwdriver. So imagine if you never do a flush and you have something like this in the reservoir. It will be suctioned in the system and it will damage the whole brake system. Let's uncap the new brake fluid. Put the filter back first and fill up the reservoir. It will take about half of the bottle. After filling up, immediately put the caps back on because we don't want the new fluid to absorb moisture. So after pouring the old fluid, I still see some small particles resting at the bottom of the container, so I'm glad we are doing this brake flush. Now I'm gonna put the container back and change the valve from this to this so we can bleed from the calipers. Here's how the flushing procedure will be. We're gonna start from furthest point to closest point. Rear right wheel, rear left. Front right, and then front left is the closest point to the master cylinder. So for bleeding brake fluid from each caliper, we're gonna need 8mm wrench to open the valves, bleeding gun, and water spray in case of dripping any brake fluid. Now we're gonna start from rear right wheel, removing rubber boots, putting 8mm wrench on the valve. Now I'm gonna open the valve. Bleeding valve is on. It will suction new fluid from the reservoir to the brake calipers, and you will see when the new fluid comes out. And that is it, the flushing procedure done for this corner. After the flushing is done and new fluid came out, I will close the valve. And the last thing, don't forget to put the rubber boots on, and we are done here. After bleeding each corner, you need to drain the container, because I flush it till I fill the whole container, and I wanted to make sure to have a good flush. The important thing is to fill the brake reservoir with the new fluid again after bleeding each wheel, otherwise it will suction air into the system. Alright, moving to the rear left wheel and doing the same procedure. Alright, I'm gonna speed up the process, but for each wheel you're gonna need 5 minutes for bleeding each caliper. In case of spilling any drop of brake fluid, just spray some water and that is it. We're gonna repeat the same procedure again. Draining the old fluid, filling new fluid to the master cylinder. This time we're gonna flush front right wheel, and for that we're gonna start the engine and steer the wheel. I could jack up the car and remove the wheels, but I wanted to show how to flush brake fluid at home without having that much tools. As you guys saw it, I just used the kit and 8mm wrench. For each wheel bleeding will be the same procedure. And here is the last one, which is front left wheel. It is the closest one to the master cylinder. Now I'm gonna fill the reservoir for the last time, and also I will use the tester again to test the new fluid. It reads 0% of humidity, comparing to how it was before. Now we are done here. Let's close the cap and take the shaft towels. So I quickly put the front tower strut bar and bolted again. And that is how to flush old brake fluid with using these tools. And if I show you the difference between the new fluid and the old fluid, and here's the difference. This kit made bleeding job so much easier. For the price, it has a decent suction. I wish it has a bigger container, but that's pump's capacity limit. Tool-wise, I only used this 8mm wrench, as you guys saw the procedure. Next item I would recommend you to get is this brake fluid tester. You never know if the brake reservoir cap was loose and absorbed moisture. And for brake fluid quantity, for Camry you will need two 12-ounce bottles, which I almost used all and only that much left to be accurate. I also bought this brake fluid bleeder kit, but it needs compressed air, which won't be useful for many of you. This bleeding kit is good for the price if you are willing to work on your car. I will make sure to put some links in the video description box below where you find what I used in today's video. Alright, we are done with flushing brake fluid completely. Next, let's change the transmission fluid. These newer models of Toyota Camry not coming with transmission dipstick, so you cannot check the level only if you change the fluid. So in this video I will show you where to drain the old fluid and where to fill the new fluid, and how to make sure that you didn't overfill the new fluid. So for the fluid type, we're gonna need Toyota's WS fluid type. If you will be using another brand's WS type, make sure it mentions for Japanese cars. So for doing this job, we're gonna need 3.5 liters of this 4-liter can. Approximately 2.5 liters will come out from the drain pan. We're gonna fill it with 3.5 liters of new fluid and flush the rest, which it will determine the right level in the transmission pan, which I will show you in a minute. We also gonna need gloves, 1 meter of hose, and a funnel like this. You can use a DC pump like this as well, which makes the job much easier and much faster for filling new fluid. But I'm gonna stay with the funnel to lower the cost for you guys. You should know, filling plug located behind the driver's side wheel. You can just turn the wheel to the left and do the work, but I'm gonna remove the wheel and show you how it looks with better angles. So I'm gonna lock the rear wheels, loosen the lug nuts while the wheel on the ground, and then jack up the car and put it on a jack stand and remove the wheel. You don't need to have all these tools, I'm just doing that to show you better angles with the camera. So with the wheel being removed and placed under the car for extra safety, here's where the filling plug located. We also gonna need a ratchet and 10mm socket. There's also a plastic tab missing, so don't forget to remove that as well, and the cover comes off just like this. And here's the filling plug, which labeled as WS, and it's 24mm size. Alright, let's go under the car and locate the drain plug. Here is the drain plug and it's 10mm hex. Drain pan is ready. Let's take the 10mm hex and remove the plug. Keep that in mind, only with removing drain bolt, all the fluid from the drain pan won't drain. There is a plastic straw inside it that determines the right level after filling up the new fluid, so we have to remove that as well. So we're gonna need a 6mm hex, and you can remove it by hand. With the straw being removed, now we can let it drain for a few minutes. Alright, the pan is empty. Let's put the straw back and make sure to only hand tighten it. You don't have to over tighten it. A quick wipe and then putting the drain bolt back on. And I only hand tighten it as well, because after filling we have to drain the overflow fluid with a warm and running engine. Next we're gonna need a 24mm socket to remove the filling bolt. And here is also labeled WS fluid type only. Alright, let's open the can, and I also attached the hose and the funnel as well. Let's put 3.5 liters of new fluid in the transmission. If you're working alone like me, clamp the funnel like this so the fluid won't spill on the car accidentally. And I also placed a shaft towel under the funnel in case of any oil drip. Take a half liter before pouring the fluid, so you know that only 3.5 liters in the can. Okay, I just put 3.5 liters of new fluid, Let's remove the hose and put the filling bolt back and then tighten it again. A quick cleaning so it doesn't accumulate dust. Now we can put the cover back on, and I also adding the missing plastic tab as well. Alright, now we can put the wheel back on the car. Jack up the car, remove the jack stands and lower the car. Now we can torque the lug nuts to the factory spec. Now we can start the engine and let it warm up. You can shift the gears as well. It should be soft shifting. Let's not forget the oil in the transmission not at the right level, but it's a bit more than the right level. So take the car out for a test drive just to warm up the gears, but avoid aggressive acceleration. Alright, we are back. The transmission is warmed up and the car at the flat level. Now we can open the drain plug and drain the overflow oil, and it will be at the factory level. Keep that in mind, only overflow oil will be drained because of the plastic straw. Draining is done. Now we're gonna put the drain bolt back on and tighten it back. Cleaning drain bolt is important in case of leaking oil. And now we are done with changing transmission oil. You must have softer gear shifting after oil change. You should do this oil change every 30,000 to 50,000 miles. And here's how to replace transmission fluid on 2019 Toyota Camry without using pump or any expensive tool. Alright, we are done with transmission fluid. And the last thing, let's change the engine oil and the filter. So we're gonna need 5 liter of 0W16 synthetic or fully synthetic engine oil. 4-cylinder engines on Toyota Camry needs 4.8 quart with the filter, which equals to 4.5 liters. That's why I got 5 liters. An engine oil filter, here's the part number. Oil filter socket, it should be 65 to 64 mm. Funnel, half-inch ratchet for the filter socket. 10 mm for removing oil pan cover. 14 mm for removing oil drain bolt. Some used towel and oil drain pan. Alright, let's remove the dipstick out. I like to remove the engine cover so it doesn't get oil on it, because I already washed the engine. Next, removing oil cap. I always like to wipe the top where the cap gasket sits on it and then around it. Not only give me a better seal, but keeps the dirt from falling in the engine accidentally when putting the funnel on. I'm gonna block the rear tire and then jack up the car and put it on a jack stand. It's not necessary to have a jack and jack stand, but you can use your car's jack and lift the car that much so you can reach the drain bolt and the filter. But for me, because I have to show better view angles with the camera and using light, I need more space. Looks like this car missing the engine cover. It should have big plastic cover that bolts on the subframe and a small plastic cover for the oil service. Here is the 40 mm oil drain bolt, and here is the 65 mm oil filter located at the left side of the engine. Okay, drain pan under the car. Let's remove 40 mm drain bolt. While the oil draining, we're gonna put the filter socket on the ratchet and remove the oil filter. Whoever put this filter on used ratchet to tighten it up. You can tell that it's too tight and the engine moves when I'm trying to loosen it up. Oil filters should be hand tightened only without using ratchet. After removing old filter, make sure that the old gasket not still on the engine, and then we're gonna clean it up for the new filter. Let's take the new filter out. They already oiled the rubber gasket, but if it's not, use some oil and put it on a rubber gasket. It will provide better seal and easier for removing for the next oil change. If you notice, I didn't fill the new filter with the new oil. It's necessary to fill the oil filter only on heavy duty engines because of the filter size. Hand tightening new filter is enough without using ratchet. Next, cleaning drain area and putting back 40 mm drain bolt. If you are using torque wrench, torque the 40 mm drain bolt to 30 pound-feet of torque. I always like to clean the oil pan and the filter area so I can know if there is any new leak. Alright, we are done under the engine. Let's lower the car so we can fill it with the new oil. First, I'm gonna uncap all the 5 liters. We're gonna put 4 liters and then half of this one, which it will be 4.5 liters, equal to 4.8 quart. Alright, let's grab the funnel and pour the new oil in the engine. If you own any model of Camry from 2018 to 2022, you can use 0W20 engine oil if you couldn't find 0W16. But for best fuel economy and engine performance, use 0W16. I like to leave it like that to drain while I get another liter. So we're gonna continue pouring 4 liters and then the last one pouring half liter. And here's the last one, we're gonna pour half liter. In total it will be 4.5 liters. Take the funnel out and put the cap back on. Engine cover back on. Let's check the level with the dipstick. Make sure to wipe the dipstick so you don't get wrong reading. It's at the second dot, which is the right level. Now we're gonna start the engine. It's important to start the engine after oil and filter change. Check the drain bolt and the filter for any leak. After oil change, we need to reset scheduled maintenance. We're gonna use arrows at the left side of the steering wheel. Press back, go all the way to the gear icon, vehicle settings, scheduled maintenance, press OK, and reset completed. And now we can get back to the main page.